So for our master category section this week, we are talking with our friend Andrew Kolb. And if you already listened to the first part of this, then you know that we're just good friends with this guy. And actually, at the end of this last episode, the Around the Table portion of the show, Patrick led in with some rather interesting Star Wars conversation. Now, I will say this, in the interest of full disclosure, we did pick up the conversation from that point. And about 35 minutes later, we decided that's way too much content not talking about Andrew. So that is all going to be released to our patrons only. There is some really, really good conversation, lively discussion about Star Wars, among other things, but primarily Star Wars. So if you want to hear that discussion, if you want to see that video, you got to hop onto our Patreon channel and become a patron. So there you go. That's the little quick elevator pitch for you. Yep. Go and do that. So we're going to pick up the conversation from somewhere completely different, and that's going to be to say, Andrew, tell us what has been going on since last we talked about all of your work.
I mean, yeah, because I guess usually I come in for 10 minutes, talk about a comic I love, and then just disappear.
Right.
Back in, you just kind of fade away into the ethos.
Yeah, I show up with a book, and then I drop it on the table, and then just wiggle out.
Wiggle?
Yeah, like I don't know, like a slink, maybe. I don't know. What's going on?
That doesn't sound right.
We talked so long about Star Wars. I'm just really thinking about that now. So, what's going on with me? I guess books is the big thing. Like I had a couple of picture books come out recently.
Yeah.
I'm like busy pitching more, and kind of doing my own kind of freelance stuff. I guess for those who kind of kept track with what my kind of general structure is, I was teaching part-time, and that was kind of the offset to my freelance work. But this semester I'm not teaching, so strictly self-employed or strictly kind of illustrating full-time. So that's where I'm at. That's what I'm up to, is just kind of like living the dream. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm living my dream, I guess.
Well, it's definitely a dream.
Yeah. So let's jump in. We've talked a bit before this episode about maybe how we wanted to focus the conversation. So, Andrew, you've been on the show several times. I mean, basically more than anyone else, other like sans us. And you know,
it's true.
We've talked about a lot of the surface level stuff. We've talked about what you do and maybe some of the process and how you do your approach and things like that. So what we want to do today is go a different direction and maybe talk about something that people are curious about, but maybe don't ask or don't get a chance to ask. And that's we want to talk about money. That's where we want to focus today. And so especially, I mean, this is it's timely for you. You're transitioning from having a job, having the maybe security that comes with that someone else is responsible maybe for your paycheck to some degree, to now that entire weight falls on you. And then there's other conversations within this, which is maybe how you decide to bill, how you structure agreements and how you follow up and all those things. So let's pick a point and dive in. So maybe talk about that transition, having to now carry that weight of it yourself. What is going through your head, and what are the pros and cons of that you're weighing in order to make that decision?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, I think the first thing I'll say is obviously this is my experience and not in any way representative of like all freelancers or all Canadian artists. I don't know, all people named Andrew.
You're speaking on behalf of yourself, and that's as far as you can speak.
Yeah, so I think for me. Yeah, perfect. So I think for me, the big thing was I really wanted to, I think with any kind of like major jump, the thing that a lot of people kind of didn't warn me about, or I think I had to realize on my own, was I was so busy. Let's say I was teaching and so busy with freelance that I kind of was being pulled too thin. Like I was doing 25 hours of work in 20. But once I took one part of it out, then that 25 hours of work now became 15 hours within 20. So the first kind of leap is always going to be the kind of like lowest point, because you're inevitably taking out a large chunk of your, I guess in the realm of money, income, right? So you now have to kind of build that up to something that is stable on your own. So I guess for me, the big kind of learning curve was that big leap and being so busy that you need to make a break is going to be immediately followed by you're not busy enough. And that is scary, I think, not just for me, but for anybody who's willing to kind of do that, because it's a big kind of black sea of the unknown. So I think the first kind of step is to be prepared for, or to get as far into that kind of like overload before you break something off. Because I think if you just find you're a little busy with your full-time job and freelance, I think you're going to be really not staffed, but like you're not going to have definitely enough work once you go full freelance.
Yeah, I mean, if you're working 40 hours a week at a job, then the reality is there's now 40 hours that aren't accounted for.
Right. And I was lucky that I was transitioning from full-time to part-time now to strictly freelance. I also tell my students, or I used to tell my students, that it's totally okay to have a job that's unrelated to the creative industry. I think the thing you want to do for freelance. And I think because you burn up so much energy during your day job, if it's a creative field, that when you get home to do that yourself just feels like more of what you've already done. So I think the other thing I was trying to do was find work that was related or relevant, but not the exact same. Like teaching and my freelance really use two different parts of my brain. That's why I could do so much of it. Like I could spend extra hours doing lesson plans and extra hours doing my own work because they were so different. I think it's like when I eat too much having dinner, but then I always still have room for dessert. It's like, well, I mean, like it's different now, so I can totally justify it.
Sure. It's different food.
Yeah, so I think that's it too.
So now being in this fully freelance world, what are the things that you personally have to account for? So if someone right now is about to make the transition, and maybe there's things they don't consider, whether it's taxes or healthcare, or I have to be mindful of this piece or that piece, or I might finish a project and not get paid for 60 days. What are those things that you now have to be aware of that maybe you didn't have to think about before?
Yeah, because I think like everything just scales up, right? Like if you're working freelance and you have 2 or 3 jobs on your own and they don't pay for 3 weeks, that's not a big deal because you still have full-time income.
Right.
So when you're just freelance, that's it. So I think the big things I was really making sure of was that I had as many like months of stability, that if, like, let's say I got no work now for the next 6 months, would I still literally be able to survive? And that was kind of my big thing. And I guess maybe that's also something to figure out, is what are your base needs before you kind of go to freelance? I mean, I'm also like unmarried. My only kind of dependent is my cat, who is a very low impact on my monthly costs. So it's very easy for me to be able to figure out how much I need per month to cover basic necessities.
Yeah.
And then try to figure out, can I live off of what I have for 3, 4, 6 months, or at least figure out how many months you could live off of that before you decide to pull the plug. Because for a while you're going to be chipping away at that. Like I said, like if you were going from 40 hours plus 20 hours of freelance, now you're just doing 20 hours of freelance. Like that's half of what you need. So really planning out, like storing for the winter, I guess. I think that's the big thing. Like, I guess taxes are things to consider too. The delay in getting paid. Like, I think all of that is also help offset by having different streams of income, I guess, is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So I think most artists at this point have seen that others have like a shop, and then they'll also do client work, maybe commissions.
Right.
But I think you really kind of have to be willing to be responsible for everything. Like it's all on you if you don't have work.
Right. Can I ask a question about the pay schedule and stuff like that? Because there's a couple different ways that people go about it, and it works better for different situations for every person. And I just want to kind of what you thought about it. Some people they don't give the final files until it's paid. They get half up front, or they do a 30-day, or they do a 60-day, or whatever. Kind of, what are your thoughts on those different things, and what have you kind of landed on, or is it different per project?
I think what I usually try to do is if it's a new client, I really try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but also really temper my risk. Like I will ask for deposit up front, and that way, if it takes them 6 months to pay that second half or 70% or whatever is still left, then it's at least I haven't done it all for completely free. But usually after 2 or 3 jobs with someone, and I think most of my work is with clients, like repeat clients or repeat collaborators, that I kind of know what to expect. Like I know there are clients that every time I remind them or check in that I've sent an invoice, they never got it, and then I send it again, and that's fine because I know that like they're not intentionally doing it to spite me. Like it's just the nature of how they work. So I think the big thing is keeping track and kind of keeping records to kind of say, oh, the last 2 times I billed this person, I gave them 30 days, but they always paid 45, or they always paid in 2 months. So that way you kind of know what to expect and can plan for that. So I guess the whole thing for me for freelance is I also keep a lot of records. Like there's a lot of kind of note keeping that I keep track of, so I can try to figure out or see patterns. So I don't know. Did that answer it? I think my big thing
that's
is
good.
Yeah, I usually do 30 days. And some clients I know will be longer. Some clients I know send the check out the same day, and that's just kind of the nature of working with individuals.
Sure.
I'll throw my hat in the ring real quick for part of that question as well.
Yeah.
For now I'm on the web side, not on your side, but I'm sure there's a lot of similarities as far as this goes. For probably medium to large size projects, now the amount of deposit's going to change, but generally what happens is that, like, let's assume that the project's going to take X amount of time. Let's just say 20 units of time. Like, it doesn't matter if that's days or weeks or whatever, just like 20 units of time. Then the deposit would represent either 50% of that or 25% of that, depending on the size of the job. And then the way it's structured is that, and again, this is in my experience, just to give you an idea of another way to handle it, you would bill against the deposit. So basically the deposit is a pool of money you're billing against. And then as soon as that runs out, then at that point, you can then bill as you go. So that's another way some people handle it, or they will bill against it. And then once it runs out, then they will require another payment. So like if you're going to have a long project that's going to span a couple months, maybe you don't want to have to wait 4 months to get paid for it. When like you have to live in the meantime. So that may be a way that you handle it, is to have a portion of that up front. And again, that's a pool that you're just billing against.
Right.
And then as I said before. So,
and I think that also goes into the nature of your work versus mine, and that maybe that's another conversation. Do you generally bill like with an hourly rate, or do you bill based on piecework? Like this website will cost X dollars, or it'll be between X and Y because I have to figure out the hours.
Yeah, so so this is a really large conversation that I'm going to try to keep small because I want to keep it focused on you. It depends. The reason time makes sense in many cases is because people don't know what's required. So someone wants to say, how much does a website cost? And the thing is, they don't understand. They have a hard time. Like all of us can say, like, what's a good deal and a bad deal for a carton of eggs, or like gas at the gas pump.
Who's wheeling and dealing for eggs?
You'd be surprised. That market is crazy.
Yeah, the market.
The underground egg market is nuts.
There are things that we do understand what they cost or why they cost what they do, but a lot of times with web, like people don't understand it at a level to understand that, and so you have to attach it to something people do understand, and that's time. Right. And they can understand it because maybe their job pays them based on the amount of time they spend or whatever it is. So you just have to take something that allows people to associate the value, and then you can charge an hourly rate or something based on that. Now, there are things that are more valuable than the hourly rate spent, certainly. Right. And so some clients, they are value-based or, whatever it is. I'll skip the anecdotes right now. So the point is, it's a client-by-client thing. Time is just a way of connecting value, but there are other factors. That's just kind of where the time fits in. But I'll say that more and more, I'm doing value-based billing, or I'm doing like project billing and not focusing so much on the actual amount of hours it takes to like actually accomplish it. Because sometimes I invest more than maybe what the hourly rate will be. Sometimes I invest less. Sometimes I get to invest less because, I think of, I want to say his name because I don't want to, I want to be respectful. Where's this guy? Well, I just won't say it. David Clayton. That's what it is. David Clayton, the company that he works for, they build tools for Illustrator. And so by making these tools for Illustrator, they are creating for themselves an advantage, a time advantage.
Sure.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense. Like their benefit, the thing they get in return is that they get to make more money for less time invested.
Sure.
And so those are cases where if you're efficient or you're developing tools, you should be rewarded for doing that.
As opposed to penalized, right?
As opposed to being penalized of, hey, great, you're super efficient, therefore now you have to do 30% more work than everyone else to get the same paycheck. So for someone that's listening thinking like, oh, you overbill people, that's not the idea. The idea is that I'm trying to create, like, I'm working hard to create an advantage for myself in a lane.
Right.
And that also comes down to experience too, right? Like 10 years from now, you will know more than you do today, that either your hourly rate will go up to reflect that it's going to take you 2 hours, what this year could have taken you 10 just because of skill.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense. And I think that makes sense for kind of the sort of realm that you're working in, like for illustration. I mean, if I do a cover for a magazine, whether it takes me 2 hours or it takes someone else who's doing pen and ink 14 hours, it's still valued to the magazine the same.
Right.
So at the end of the day, that's where most of my work tends to be quoted out based on the value to the client. Because it just makes more sense. Like it does. I mean, like we're saying, if I'm efficient because I've been drawing for 10 years or because I know how to get to the right concept in my first 2 sketches, it doesn't make sense to then lose money on that.
Right.
And
so that was the conversation that we started that before we even started recording, and this is kind of why we are doing this today. You made a distinction on the value, or you said something about billing for an advertising project versus a different kind of freelance project or a poster or something else, and maybe tell a little bit what that distinction is for you, and then kind of what that value is. If you want to go into any more, I think you kind of just hit on it a little bit, but is there any more you want to say about it?
I think the big thing is for advertising, for publishing, like even let's say I'm doing a book cover design, it'll be very different for a publisher where they're making 5,000 copies versus 20,000 copies. So even if I'm spending the same amount of time doing the same number of concepts, it's worth more to the company that's selling 20,000 copies than it is to the company that's selling 5. I mean, like that 5,000 copy book could end up becoming a New York Times bestseller, and they have to go and do 20 print runs. But at the time of you quoting, if you know kind of the scope of what the project is, you should be quoting accordingly. So even if you are new, even if you are not as experienced, you may want to reduce your rates or look at the standard rate and take a percentage off. But at the end of the day, even if it's like if Nokia is coming to you because they want to do an ad campaign and they love your style and they want it to be the face of this next product, then you are still valuable enough to them that you should be paid based on the industry, not based on your experience. And that's where kind of books and research and talking to your peers is important.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to me, yes, 100%. Like if I know that the end use is going to be of a certain scale, then I think that's going to be considered when I quote for the project.
Sure.
Which is also why like doing private commissions is really tricky, because like the value to them is really high, but it's also not like it's not going to have the reach. Like it's tricky. Like quoting private commissions is probably the hardest thing I do, because to them it's worth its weight in gold, but their budget is probably also like nominal compared to like a publishing firm, right? Like it's just a different industry. So it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. I think my big thing when quoting something or when looking at any project is figuring out, like, is it going to be something that I'm going to enjoy? Is it going to be something that I'm going to get paid for? Like is there just like fiscal? Like I admittedly take enough projects that I may not ever show or like put in my portfolio. I'm so proud of, but it's not the type of work that I want to do more of outside of that client.
Sure.
But it pays the bills, and that's okay too. Like, I think if part of your portfolio, like, or your work portfolio is that kind of work, then that's fine. But if it's not going to give you like fiscal stability and it's not going to give you like personal satisfaction, if it's not one or the other, then I don't know why you do it.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not saying there's right or wrong. If you have another like opinion, I want to talk about it. But I think that's kind of how I look at a project. Like, maybe it's going to pay really well, but I'm not going to be putting in my portfolio or on my site, or vice versa. Like the private commissions, I may make $50 of it or out of it, but at the end of the day, if it's something that I love and I get full control over and I get to put on my site and it gets you more work, then that's okay too.
Yeah.
So how does that work then when you're dealing with you are now right, wrong, or indifferent. You are in the kids book sphere now, right? I mean, okay, so
yeah, definitely.
The projects that you take on, publicly versus privately, is there an extra layer of criticism? Not criticism. Is there an extra layer of filter that your work has to go through now for yourself to uphold some predetermined or otherwise version of yourself, because you are now in the kids, like the children's illustrated book sphere that didn't matter as much when you were doing primarily gallery work? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, like, do I now have to curate my work more because of the world I'm kind of working in?
Yes.
I mean, in theory, yes. But I think part of why I got into, or part of how my work got me into that sphere, was because that's naturally what I gravitated towards. Like, I know there was one project that I got approached to do. It was like an animation, so I would just be doing the assets, but it was for a game that looked cute but was super violent, like kind of like a Happy Tree Friends or like early South Park type thing, where that contrast was the big selling point. And admittedly, I personally didn't want to do it, and I didn't want to kind of be associated with that sort of violence. So, I mean, yes, I guess it's curating, but it's also because I've directed my work towards what I just kind of feel comfortable with and what I feel passionately about, which I think is a kind of maybe the goal of most artists, to kind of get the sort of work that you want to do. So I think that's maybe part of it. So I guess it's a natural selection. Like, I don't get given certain jobs because I don't do certain work, and because I don't do that work, I don't get, like, it's just self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And we've heard that. I mean, we've heard that 1,000 times from our conversations with other people, but it seems like literally in the last 2 months, we've heard that with just about every single person that we've talked to. That idea of the work that you do creates the work that you continue to do, and like the work. So I was just wondering if we're getting real talk now. You're freelance only now. You are responsible for making your money, and you've got to get out there and you've got to hustle it.
Yeah.
And someone comes to you and they have a project for you that not unsavory in the sense that it's like, you know what I mean? Not an extreme version of that, but you also know it's not going to be something that you're getting ready to pitch another book to the children's book.
Yeah, I have an Eyes Wide Shut commission I would like.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Do you still take that for the money and you just don't post it?
I mean, yeah, I think it would depend, because Eyes Wide Shut is a good example that I think if I was given that commission, if they're asking me to do it, they kind of know how I'm going to interpret it. Like, I'm not going to give them something. I mean, it just depends. Like, I'm going to give them kind of my version of that. So if that's what they wanted, then I think everybody wins.
I want that. I'm serious. I think that'd be great, but go ahead.
No, and that's great. I think that's fine too. So I guess, so Andrew, the long and short of your question is, yes, I would still take it, but I think it would need to be clear that what they're looking for is what I can do well. Because I think whether it's like getting paid or not, I also feel like I'm lucky, or I really kind of aggressively pursue the projects that I think I could still give them something that they're happy with. Like, I think if the client said, do you know what we really want? Like a Cuphead, like rubber hose, like 1920s style aesthetic, I think I could do that, even if it's not my usual flair. But if they wanted, I don't know, what's a good example? Like 80s, like Garbage Pail Kids or something like that, where it's like really overtly gross, fun, but overtly gross. I don't know if I'd be the right pick for that.
Sure, that makes sense.
So I'd talk to them, but I probably wouldn't be able to take that project.
I feel like you'd be a great fit. All right, so I want to touch on one other thing real quick. And maybe this isn't, it's kind of tied in. Okay, you're familiar with Tracy Ching?
Not offhand, but give me a point of reference.
You will have seen her work. That's your frame of reference.
Yeah, I don't.
No,
are you familiar with Daniel Danger?
Yeah.
Daniel Danger is a good example. And I love both these artists, by the way.
They don't have the same style at all, but they're both
No,
very
they don't have
intricate.
the same style. But what I'm trying to say is they do very detailed pieces.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. But when I think about what this stuff what this stuff sells for, it's kind of in the same ballpark as maybe something you would produce or someone else. Oh, yeah. And I'm just curious, is there a part of you that A, feels like those suckers have to spend way more time than I have to spend to make the same money? And B, where you think, maybe I could make my style a bit more simplistic, and maybe squeeze out a little bit more dollar value.
Push those boundaries to where a face is literally just a block.
Right. I think, yes. I think it works the other way. Like, I think I see that work, or I see, I can't think. He did the Star Wars, like the column of the
Kevin Tong.
Thank you. So I look at any of his pieces and go, how...
That?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Perfect. Yeah, right there. Yeah. So I look at that and go, man, how do I get to that? Like, how could I be better like that? Because I think they're deserving what they're getting paid. So it's just imposter syndrome. So do I try to like cut corners? No, because again, I think like the work you put out is still going to be the type of work or the stuff that people want you to do more of. So I'd rather do something that I'm enjoying if I'm going to have to keep doing it.
Sure.
And then, do I think they're suckers? No. Because I think the other part is they're also getting very different projects. Like, if you look at the properties that they're doing or the sorts of the work that they're doing, very different from mine. And I think actually Mondo is a great example of that. Like, the sorts of movies I do or the sorts of posters I do for them are very different because like a Kevin Tong doesn't, not that it doesn't make sense, but it isn't the right fit. So... Yeah. I think it's just kind of really kind of sticking to your guns and doing what you think is
I think
your best work.
I think we would be surprised if we looked at your, like, if we were able to, step back and see this is the amount of time that Daniel Danger spends on a piece, this is the amount of time you spend on a piece, while your style is seemingly simpler, quote unquote, than his. You probably spend just as much time in color and texture that he doesn't necessarily have to have, because his is more, he has color and gradient and intricate line work, but when you go into much texture and stuff, it's not quite there because it's all textured from line work more than actual other textures that go into it. So it'd be interesting to see, like, time for time. I imagine you guys are spending maybe similar, because again, he does that type of work all the time, so he's learned how to be fast in it. So I don't think detail necessarily equates in an hourly rate. Maybe detail doesn't equate to the same amount of time.
Does someone want to confirm or deny what Luke is saying may have truth?
What do you mean? Yeah. I mean, I think we all tend to become efficient at the thing that we do day in and day out. Right. That doesn't necessarily, I mean, to say, it can go either way. I mean, to say that Daniel Danger's piece takes more time because it's more intricate is, I think, the same amount of speculation that Luke would say that saying he and Andrew Kolb take the same amount of time. I think it's it's spoken both from a place of not knowing how long it takes.
Exactly, right.
Well, there are projects we do know. I mean, I won't say specifically which ones, but there are people we've talked to about releases that say, oh, yeah, I spent 4 hours on that. And then maybe 20 minutes picking out colors for a variant. And then we've talked to other people that dropped 120 hours into a print. And then when they both go to sell, they're within $15 of each other. So we have talked to people where there is a huge disparity in the amount of time spent. And so my question is not to say that specifically this person spends more time. It's just to beg the question, have you ever considered simplifying on some level in order for the time spent to have a greater dollar value attached to it? Maybe you've chosen not to over deliver for a client, or maybe push a piece as far as you could have, because it just, for whatever reason. I don't know how much you're thinking about that.
I think that's a fair question. I think that's also something that does happen. Maybe not as, I don't want to say aggressively, maybe not as overtly or consciously as possible, but I think on some level, if I know a client is looking for, or if their budget is X and they need a drawing of something else, then because I've done enough drawings, or I've made my work enough times, I know, if I do this, then it's pretty, like, I think efficiently, or I think about the process while I'm drawing it. Or it's maybe that's also as simple as just not trying something new with this project. Like, I find a lot of my personal work tends to be the thing where I try to experiment or try something different. One, because if a client says no, it's not time lost. But two, it's also because I know I will get it done within my allotted time for it.
Sure.
So it may not be as so much as I'm simplifying to save on hours, but it's definitely the concepts I send them will be ones that I know I can do, as opposed to ones that I am not sure about.
Sure.
So maybe it's not the exact answer, but I think that's maybe how I solve that problem. There might be others that definitely do think that way, and I'd be interested to hear that.
I think that's a really smart approach, and I think that's why we're having this extended conversation with you. We're at this place now where we can ask these questions, and people have heard from you, at least on our show. They've heard about your work, and a little bit of the method behind it is really helpful, especially for some of our audience who is trying to be in this field or is in this field and trying to be better at it, or whatever. So with that, let's shift to our finals. We don't usually get to do final questions with you.
I know. I usually just disappear and say goodbye.
And you just go away. But we'll shift to finals, and I'll let one of the other guys take it.
I'm happy to. Don't tell me I'm going to forget my final question that I was so excited to ask. Oh my gosh!
You don't need us to tell you because
I think everybody's telling you that right now.
Luke, do you have yours on deck?
Luke, do yours while I remember mine.
Okay, yeah. I mean, my final is I think we've kind of already covered some of it. So when you're figuring out for a client, what they need or what they're asking for, there's a little bit of the, for most clients, you're trying to help them get to a point where maybe they don't know what they're asking for necessarily. We've all had those projects. How does that work for you monetarily? So you're putting time into producing content for them, but there's also the time of maybe ideating with them. Do you count that as just your production time, or is that something separate of more of a concepting? Is there a differentiation with you? Do you understand my question?
Yeah, it's funny because I think until now I've never considered actually billing for that for that time. It's always just been the amount of either the emails or the meetings or everything leading up to us signing the contract to say let's start this project has always just been to me the equivalent of cold calling or getting work. So it's just I could never bill anyone for looking up the directory and emailing random people to say, do you want to work together? So I've never considered that. I think, how do I prepare or lead into that? It's with way too many questions. Like, I'm constantly, like, by the time we sign, I know that, or we have something clearly communicated enough that if I deliver it and they're not happy with it, it's because they didn't tell me something, or because they misunderstood. And then we have that conversation.
Sure.
So do I bill for that, or do I like allot time for that? No, I guess I don't. I don't bill for that. Do I use that as a litmus for what the relationship is going to be like? For sure. If they have no idea what they want, or they have no idea of a sense of budget, then I really go into that conversation cautiously, because if they don't have any sense, then I don't feel like they've done any research. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it also just means it's going to be more work for me to fill them in, or to make sure that we're both on the same page.
Yeah.
It's going to be more of an uphill battle.
Yeah, and sometimes that's okay, but I also look at the clients I have, and I can only take on so many of those at a time, because just like anything, each relationship requires a different amount of energy.
Sure.
And if I take on too many of those, I'm drained, because it's just a lot of either emails or hand-holding or admin that is not what I want to. Like, I just want to be drawing all the time, right? So I really try to temper that.
Have you ever gotten into those like pre-meetings or whatever before you actually, sign a contract, where you go, doesn't sound like you guys are quite ready with the concept yet? Can we hold off until you are, or is that not something
That's Patrick's final question, by the way. He just took it.
No, I remembered mine.
So have I gone to that? I think what I've gotten to is saying, this is what I think you need. And if they say, no, we think we need this, or we're not sure yet, then I'm usually able to say, like, okay, well, this is where I'm at. If you have a counterpoint, then that's fine. Mm-hmm. But if you're just saying no, but not giving me a solution, then I usually take that as a cue to exit.
Gotcha.
And I have done that. So to answer your question, yes, I have also done that.
Sure.
But it's with less and less frequency, because I feel like I've gotten better at communicating and asking questions, and really making sure that I know where they want to go. So yeah, it's happened, but it's rare if I stick with it. So if I have the time and energy to get them there, then it's a high success rate of getting us to a good spot.
Cool. All right, Patrick, go for it, man.
Okay, Patrick.
Okay, so let's pay it forward. The idea is advice to the next person. So you've made your transition, and now maybe a month from now, someone is going to make theirs. What is something that you didn't do, or you messed up, or you forgot, or didn't know about, that you would say, hey, next guy or girl, make sure you do this?
Okay. I think in this most recent leap, I didn't do it, but in previous leaps, like from going from full-time to part-time, I didn't realize this, was that there are waves, and that you have to kind of be proactive or use those waves as efficiently as possible. So when work is busy, you don't have time to post your work, and you don't have time to kind of cold email. And I don't know if this is new it's certainly not, but it's definitely what I needed to hear, which is when you're busy, the last thing you're thinking about is getting more work. But once you finish it and you don't have anything on the horizon, or you only have one project that's ongoing, you have to be willing to put yourself out there and change gears, and not just expect that the work is going to keep going. And also recognize that it's not a straight meritocracy. Like, it's not, if I put out this work, I will get this much money. It's kind of more, I found to be more like a step ladder, where you kind of plateau for a while, and then you think that I'm just stuck. But then someone shares your work, or you get a new project, or someone else sees something, and then you kind of get to this new level. And then you kind of plateau there, and you ride that wave for a while, and then it kind of goes up again. So,
and then you hit Andrew Kolb level.
Right.
Sure. I mean, like, whatever, for me, it's a step ladder. For some people, it's a great staircase. But either way, I think, and I still need to remind myself of this, is just to kind of keep going, with work that you love, just whether it's personal projects or emailing people. Yeah.
So that's a perfect segue into my final question then. So we've talked a lot about your process, and a lot about the ins and outs of how you do what you do. what's next for you? We know that recently you've shifted to doing a lot of stuff with the children on the children's book scene. What's next for you? What's on the bucket list, or something that you're maybe even already in the process of working on that you can share? Maybe not give all the details, but we're rounding out 2017, right? 2017 is about a month and a half away from being gone. What does 2018 hold for fans of Andrew Kolb?
So I think the simple answer is like more books, like as the kind of like small scale life goals as it is. Like I think I just like to kind of keep building my library, and being able to tell different stories. Outside of that realm, I'd like to be able to get to the point where I'd like to be able to table or go to a con and have like enough work to be able to sustain that.
Nice.
And maybe get into like dimensional stuff. Like, so pie in the sky, my big picture answer is like, I just did those racers. I don't know, like for the month of October, like that series. Yeah. Something like that. I'd love to make like a series of basically like Happy Meal toys. Of like little car racers type thing.
That's a great answer. Please do that.
Yeah. I don't know how I get there.
Let's figure it out.
I mean, basically I will put that out into the universe. So if someone hears
Chris Lee or Gary Ham, we can hook you up with some people.
Yeah. So perfect. So that's my answer. Toys.
All right.
Yeah, dude. That's cool. I was hoping augmented reality was going to be on there, but we'll keep fingers crossed.
Oh.
Tell everybody where they can find the work that we've talked about. Very little in this episode, but that where they can see all the work that you do and follow you.
That's okay. Yeah, my website is kolbisneat.com. And that's my handle on all of my social media. So that's a good way to find me. I mean, if you're listening to this and on the Slack, I'm sure I could answer more pointed or very specific to you questions that if you ever have a question, just mention me and I will appear.
It's true.
I'm always there, just always in the shadows.
Andrew, as always, you're one of the greatest guys to chat with. We're so thrilled that you have stuck around and for whatever reason stayed friends with us all these years. At this point, I mean, we've been chatting on this show for like 2 years or more at this point. So, dang, that's man. We need to get you an anniversary gift.
Yeah, really.
But the exchange rate sending it to Canada. Once you come down here, we'll give you one. But man, thank you so much. Check out Andrew's work. It's awesome. We have an incredible guest coming up this Thursday. So if you don't subscribe, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on that. But you can find this episode on mofonepodcast.com, where you can also find show notes and links to all the stuff. If you're watching this on YouTube, all that stuff is right below us. Share the video, like the video, post it, let everyone know that it's happening, because you want to hear from Andrew Kolb, not from us. We're just dumb, but he's great. So you want to share this video. If you're on iTunes, or what is it? It's Apple Podcasts now.
Yep.
If you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure you subscribe to the episode on there, or subscribe to the show as well on there. Rate and review. Doesn't cost any money, but it helps us out a ton. If you do want to throw a couple dollars into the old bucket, to see the other lost footage, it's not lost, but the additional footage that is a lot of fun and a conversation with Andrew, go over to patreon.com/MF1podcast to become a patron.
I have 2 new reviews. Do you want to hear them?
We do want to hear the reviews.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. So 2. One is called Pizza for Your Brain and Your Heart.
I love that.
That's uppercase.
It says pizza. I love it.
5 stars by @BearBrains. That's right, Mr. Nate Bear.
Nate Bear, thanks.
And this is supposed to be read in your best Scottish Ellen DeGeneres voice.
I don't even know what that means.
Take it away, Andrew Kolb.
Wait, but I have to tell you what to say.
No, you read it, Patrick.
Yep.
I don't know who Ellen DeGeneres is. Who is she?
She's the TV host.
Yeah, Drew Carey.
No.
Okay, I'll give you. We'll do line by line. Okay. So, Andrew, I'll tell you the first line. The first line is, "This podcast has all the mustard you could ever need."
And now I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Just you
Scottish
do it, Patrick.
Ellen DeGeneres.
Scottish Ellen DeGeneres doesn't exist, so it's just like silence. So just take it away.
Ooh.
Patrick, just do it. You got it.
What do Scottish people sound like?
I'm from Scotland, man.
You are killing me. What potatoes? Is that what they say? Is that
Irish.
right?
That's Irish.
That's Irish.
Oh, you know the difference between Irish and Scottish?
Yes,
Yeah.
most everybody
They're
does.
different
actually,
countries.
I feel like Scrooge McDuck is Scottish. Is that right?
He is
Yeah.
Scottish, yeah.
What does he sound like?
He sounds like Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, there you go.
Scrooge McDuck.
Yes, William
there,
Wallace.
You got it. Freaking got it, man.
This podcast. No, it's gone.
You got
that
it.
Was
you got it. You got it. Keep going.
You got it. We
Scrooge McDuck. If I start with that, then I can't
do
finish
it.
with
Every
something
line.
else.
Scrooge McDuck. This podcast. Yeah, no, you're great.
As all the mustard you could ever need.
Yeah.
Is that still Scottish?
You're
good.
doing
Yeah,
it.
perfect.
You're doing
You
it.
nailed
This is
it.
everything we needed.
And believe me. Oh, nope.
You got it.
Scrooge McDuck. And believe me. Today, you need a lot of. Oh, I can't say a lot of mustard. Say mustard in Scottish.
Mustard.
Isn't that like
pretty good.
Romanian?
No, that's pretty. That's pretty good.
Mustard.
That's more
Mustard.
Romanian.
This podcast. Yeah.
All right, well, that's good. Okay, that's close enough. And then the next one is...
That was the whole thing?
Yeah, it was only 2 lines. That's the reason I was trying to get y'all to go line by line.
Oh.
Well, maybe give us the whole
so
picture
you
next
wouldn't
time.
have to do a line?
Yes, you foiled my... And instead, neither of you helped me.
Yeah.
So some friends you are.
No, we all helped you collectively. You just couldn't do it.
Scrooge McDuck.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really good. That's way better than
your
Morgan
Scottish
Freeman.
is almost
Next
better
time
than his
someone
Morgan
asks me
Freeman.
to say that. Okay.
Scrooge
Some of the-
McDuck podcast.
Nothing. Some of the best hosts, another 5 stars. This is by Stokes Design. Do we know a Stokes?
John Stokes. We know a John Stokes, a Spanky Stokes.
We know a Spanky Stokes. I think we actually know a couple Stokes. Okay. Patrick, Luke, and Andrew are great hosts who steer compelling interviews. Now, here's the thing.
It's Andrew Kolb, though.
No.
Yeah.
That was a
It's
preemptive.
you, though.
Yeah, it was preemptive based on this episode.
Who steer compelling interviews with some of the top creatives on a weekly basis. In addition, their reviews of art, film, television, and games have steered me to discover a lot of cool things since I started listening. Steer is spelled S-T-E-R. I don't know if that's correct, but it makes me think of beef. So when you say, I steered you, it just sounds like I fed you a steak.
Oh, I like steak.
Throw in the new
To be
video
fair, though,
format.
you're always thinking of beef.
Yeah, that's actually what you've learned. And eggs. Throw in the new video format and the community surrounding them, and this makes it one of my top 3 podcasts to listen to.
Well, thanks.
Now we get to guess the other 2.
Nerdist.
Yeah, and the soon-to-be-released Kolb is Neat.
Yes. Neat
Podcast.
with Kolb is what it is.
Or maybe just like every podcast I've been featured on, like all the episodes with you, Squared Co.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
it.
It's just those.
It's just those.
In progression, and then
To
our
be fair,
regular
if he
show.
released one, it'd be called Podcast is Neat.
Podcast
Yes,
is Neat.
100%. Or maybe Kolb's podcast? I don't know. No, it'd be
Ooh.
Podcast is Neat. No, you're right.
So it's
Hey.
kind of like the Nerdist, but it's the Kolbist.
Can we
Maybe.
Can we just do this off air? Remind me to tell you an idea that just spawned in my head. I don't want to say it on air because I don't want someone to take it.
But
All
it's
right, I
about
like it.
Spawn.
Ooh,
Okay.
Spawn. That's a great comic.
Okay. Anyway, check with us on the internet.
Yeah,
That's not
that's
how I
fine.
would say that.
No, that's
Follow
good.
us.
Yeah.
Check in with us on the internet. M of One Podcast on all the different social platforms.
Dude, your Rob Jones pin. I just noticed you're still wearing that. That's just
Yeah.
good. Oh my gosh.
I like that it's... Nope.
Matt Taylor. He killed it this year at
Matt
Mondo
Taylor,
Con.
Mitch Putnam. You have to do a Mitch Putnam
The
next
Rob
year.
Jones
He is doing
pin.
a Mitch Putnam.
Yeah.
He already said that he was. So that's
So good.
And here's the best part. I mean, this is great. But here's the best part. We've totally deviated.
That's fine.
Look at the pin backer, Andrew.
It's pink.
Pink.
Oh, great.
I don't know what we were saying. Follow us on the internet. Slack.
We were ending the
Go
episode.
there. Yeah, we were ending it. Let's just end it. I'm Andrew.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Luke.
And I'm also Andrew.
Peace out.
Scrooge McDuck.
Hold on to your butt.
Bye.